with their eyes open wide to see the name of Allah is Shafi. So may this journey that we've been having, Sarah, while you warm up, I'm just gonna just make a little dua that, here you are, that we have been, Allah has been planning for us a journey, a healing journey that started during the Labbaika series with Maha, talking about different aspects of trauma. And then after that, Sister Amina gave us the Receiving Noor two-step prescription for cultivating gratitude as part of our healing journey. And then after that, we have been blessed with Sister Amina's approach of learning how to receive the messenger and to differentiate between an observation and a judgment as a way to welcome the messenger. And inshallah, we're hoping Sister Maha would be joining to give us a cultivation for positivity with different techniques. And then inshallah, the ultimate healing will be the healing from shirk, the healing our heart from shirk and going back to Tawheed. And we'll be calling strongly on Sister Amina to help us with that part. And with that, I'll turn the microphone to our dearest Sarah. Bismillah.
Jazakallah khair, Alia. Dr. Alia. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh, everyone. My name is Sarah Al-Alim. I'm sure Alia has already welcomed everyone, but mashallah, welcome everyone again. This is our 5th episode now of understanding the nature of trauma, finding inspiration, support, and resources as we learn to gently, and the key word is gently, heal. I'm sure Alia has already mentioned this, Dr. Alia, but we are very blessed to have the most gentle, mashallah, Amina Elizabeth Stevens with us, who is chosen specifically for this task to share this series with us. As Dr. Aliyat mentioned, the continuation of the momentum that we developed in our October series, Healing Through Istighfar, that's also available on YouTube. If you guys haven't already done so, please join the email listserv on receivingnoor.org to stay in touch with events and other resources. Again, Sister Amina Stevens has been a practitioner and teacher in holistic wellness for over 30 years. She brings a background rich in Sufism and a heart that desires to serve. Alhamdulillah for her. Just a quick reminder, everyone, these sessions will be posted on YouTube after they are recorded and edited as necessary. And please be present in your bodies by doing our little wiggles and getting ready to receive. If you would like, Amina, I can do a quick recap that's sort of brief and sort of summarizes where we have been, where we are.
I have one sort of woe to weave into the story tonight. Would that work?
Okay.
Thank you. Shall I begin? Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So welcome tonight to everyone who is here. I would say let's begin simply by pausing and just noticing what you came into the session with. I don't know if it's a session into our gathering, our sacred circle. And just notice what you came in with feeling. What were you feeling? And we can find our seat of dignity and ease, of surrender and support, and gentleness and compassion. And notice what your body needs. So if you do need to wiggle or even just stretch your arms out, whatever your body is asking for. Now, you are welcome to do that, to stand up at any time or to just sit and see what the body needs. So I was remembering a quote I learned from the Center for Nonviolent Communication, the language of compassion that was started by the late Marshall Rosenberg. And they have a quote right under their heading on their website, and it's a quote from Rumi. And the quote is, "Beyond our ideas of right and wrong doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." This quote's a little bit longer, but that's the piece of it that they use. And that really embodies the heart of this work in compassionate communication, that we're looking for that field within ourselves, beyond right and wrong doing, right? Beyond the stories of the world, just letting go. And we're looking at how can we meet ourselves in order to meet others in that place, beyond the ideas of right and wrong doing. So I love that quote. So I had thought there were questions asked about trauma. Sister Maha sent me some. And when people initially filled out their request to be in the program, there was a list of what they were hoping to get from the program and what questions they might have. And I wrote them out quickly last night, maybe too quick, but I thought if I went through at least half of them, let's see where the questions take us before I begin the lesson for this evening. And the first question I have here is, what is trauma? So I made this easy for myself. I opened the dictionary. I wanted to see what the dictionary said about trauma. And what it said was, it's something that is deeply disturbing or distressing that happens when a person has experienced or witnessed an emotionally disturbing event. And I added that the event might be physical. Somebody could have a fall or see something happen physically to another living being. But to me, there's always an emotional component to things that happen to us that we feel in the body. So that's trauma. And then I would add a little bit more and say, as we've spoken about before, that all the things that happen to us are recorded in body memory by way of the nervous system. We looked at that nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and other parts of the brain take in that information, and then we label it. Is this a safe place? Was that something good? We have labels for our life's experience. And then we develop coping skills. How will I get through this again? How will I meet life again? So another question was, and if someone wants to jump in at any time and want more clarification or add something to this, please feel free to do that. And I also had a little disclaimer somewhere along the line here, is that I'm not a therapist. So I'm someone who studied something called polyvagal trauma work and some other things. So take some of these ideas and run with them if that feels right. So the second question is, how does a person know if they have experienced trauma? So my first thought was, I think that most people have experienced trauma in some form, probably more than once. And an indication is that there is an imprint left in the nervous system that we spoke about. And an indication might be, is if you notice, and this is why I wanted to teach this portion of trauma about the autonomic nervous system. Our sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. And our dorsal nervous system is a mobilization. And then we started to develop some ways that take us into the ventral nervous system, which is sacred ground. That's where we feel safe, where we feel self-connected, and we're able to connect with other people. So I would say if a person is spending lots of time in the sympathetic nervous system, always feeling slightly anxious, slightly busy, that would be a sign of trauma. Something has made it difficult for that person to settle in the body. It might be just wanting to please someone when we were a child, keep trying harder, be more perfect. See, so it may not be something that we depict as violent happening, but there is a kind of trauma with that thinking, with certain thoughts that we're exposed to. Or if a person is spending a lot of time in the dorsal nervous system, and a hallmark of that would be depression, isolation, hopeless, those words. And my hope was that by being able to understand what these two states are, we're able to name things. We're able to say, aha, I'm going into the sympathetic nervous system. I can catch myself a little earlier. Or whoops, I want to drop down into dorsal. Is there something I need to look at, connect with my feelings and my needs that might help me step out of that? See that? So I think that if a person spends lots of time, we dip in and out of those states, perhaps many times during the day in a light way. But the bigger offense will often leave a deeper mark. And that's what keeps us going back to those states. Who is most susceptible to trauma? And I had to think about that a little bit, just kind of feel through it. And what came to me was that I would think the people that are most susceptible, now I'm excluding big events like bombings. Everybody is susceptible to a bombing. I think about our brothers and sisters and people in certain parts of the world where there's great poverty, where there's maybe excessive crime, where there's bombings, things that weren't expected. People became refugees that never expected that in their life. So there are people who have a measure of resilience and have been able to survive that by the grace of God. And I would love to speak about resilience sometime and building resilience. If we spend a lot of time using our survival energies, those are the ones that keep us always, say, in the sympathetic nervous system. It gets exhausting after a while. That's when you start dropping into dorsal, right? I don't have any more gas in the car. And so we're learning what are those things that help us find resilience, find balance? What are the things that create a safe place in the body? And ultimately, it would be that belief in the sustainer, at any point in our journey, always coming back to that place of surrender in the name of the beloved. But there are certainly pieces to that that can be supportive, being around people that share the same values, being around people who value us and places where we feel safe, where we can be ourselves. So I want to go back to the second question. Another sign of somebody who's experienced trauma is to notice if there's addictions, right? And addictions aren't just the obvious ones like, let's say, alcohol or drugs. It might be being addicted to spending lots of money that you don't have, right? Binge watching TV for hours and hours on end all the time. We all dip in, and in and out of places. But what are the habits that tell us maybe there's something here I need to look at? Am I keeping myself busy with this in order to avoid sitting down and say, what's happening? What am I feeling? And what's an underlying need? Back to who's most susceptible to trauma. So I mentioned that you can have people that are very resilient, but when those unexpected things happen, like a bombing, like being a refugee, accidents, those things, our resilience may determine, or support from others, how we're able to survive. But another piece, because I just read something about it, was thinking about children who have not developed secure attachment. And when we haven't experienced that, the simple answer is we don't know how to drop into self-regulation. By the age of 10 months, I helped my primary teacher in this work as an assistant, but I'm always learning. And I'm one of many assistants, so I'm not like the assistant. I'm one of many assistants, but I was assisting her in a class that I hadn't taken from her before last week. And I was realizing, wow, there was just more information. And the new information is that by 10 months, an infant is figuring out how to survive if they haven't, or figuring out that their body knows, may not be here, but their body knows if they feel secure and if they don't. And if they don't feel secure, they're going to find ways that create the psyche, create their personality in order to get the needs of safety and love met. Does that make sense? So there are a lot of babies I'm thinking of, and I'm not faulting anybody as a parent. I have 10,000 things I wish I had said and done differently with my own daughter. I didn't have this information as a parent. What we do have is our own heart and listening to the body and a relationship with Allah. But some education is helpful too. And so when I talk about these things, if you're a parent and you go, gosh, I didn't do with my child, there's no judgment. There's no judgment. We do the best we can do based on the experiences that we had when we were children or things that we learned from other people. So self-regulation is important. There was a book I must have read. I was trying to figure it out, and I didn't have enough fingers and toes to count. It was probably over 50 years ago that I read the book. And it was by Joseph Chilton Pearce, and it was perhaps his first or second book. And the gist of it is, if you thought of a baseball game with home base, first, second, third base, right? Like a baseball field. Home base is when the infant is with the mother. And ideally for that, whatever that period of time is, the infant bonds with the primary caretaker. Then as the infant grows, the next unit, first base, so long ago I read it, so I may not be 100% right, but the infant goes to first base at a time when they start interacting with family. However, if that secure attachment didn't happen here as an infant, their body is big enough to move on, but emotionally they're not. Emotionally, they're still somewhat back in infancy. And then I think second base was pretty much going into school, so taking that step away from the family unit. And then third base would be going out in the world. So the emotional pieces that one learns at each of those stages prepares them in a perfect world, right? In a perfect world, I'm not the perfections here. You know, the dunya is the dunya. But in a perfect world, those pieces become complete so that when the bird leaves the nest, they're ready to fly into the world. But I know I wasn't emotionally prepared. I needed all kinds of support in ways that I didn't know and understand. And we see that in the world, right? We see that in the world. And so that secure attachment, we can also catch it from others. That's what we're doing, co-regulation. The baby catches it from mom, right? And mom catches it from the baby. It's a wonderful kind of little feedback loop of love. And we learn to settle in our bodies by being held, by being seen, and by being heard. That's so I think people who are susceptible to trauma are those that didn't have that. And the other piece here is that we haven't always learned how to set boundaries. If we didn't have parents that understood boundaries, which means they cross boundaries, that might mean getting hit, being yelled at. And I'm human. I probably whacked my daughter a few times, and I probably said things, not probably, I said things that I wish I hadn't said or wasn't there for her in ways that were needed. And I certainly had that as a child, as much as I gave my daughter love and I was given love. But when boundaries are crossed when we're children, we don't know how to set boundaries in the world. It's a difficult challenge. So, and what I wanted to do is say, again, is reaffirm that there's no shame or blame to anybody as a parent because we didn't know there was a different way of parenting, which means a different way of being. So we're just learning now. And there's so many wonderful resources available for us to learn. So question number 4 was, what makes an event traumatic to one person and not to another person? So it depends on the measure of resiliency that a person has developed within. Did they have secure attachment? And if not, were they able to create that secure attachment? So I forgot to pull it out. Darn it, I'm sorry. I'll try and remember to bring it next week. It's a postcard that I loved some years ago, and it was a painting somebody did of a woman sitting on the bank watching the water go by in a river. And what that was for me is that the flow of river is time, it's change, it's that movement. And the woman sitting on the bank is the witness, the one who is able to witness the events in life. It's not that we don't get caught in or seek empathy for ourselves and others, but it's also that ability to witness. And it made me think of the divine names, Yahayu, Yakayum, Yahayu, Yakayum. Life, the river is life, Yahayu, and Yakayum is having that center within. There's a story of an experiment that was done, and I don't remember all the pieces of the story, but there was a group of people together and they wanted to see about their startle reflex. And I don't think they knew what was going to happen. They were probably wired up to machines. And among the people was a Buddhist monk. And what there was the sound of a gunshot. And you know, the startle reflex, right? It's that, like when you throw your arms back, like that, startle reflex. And I think that everyone had a startle reflex but the Buddhist monk. And the reason is because his life practice, he had been able to build that place of witnessing from within rather than his life energies being here and there and there. And his field, the energy around him, was big enough to encompass the sound of that gunshot and not be rattled by it. It was just another sound in his field. So, and to be able to develop that with patience, I need patience. I tend to want to jump into things 100% and sometimes go to extremes and then bounce back a little bit or a lot. So, but to be on that journey of developing the witnessing presence and saying, Sister Yamina, you said it so beautifully a couple weeks ago in one of your programs. You were talking about the zikr, the La ilaha illallah. And the way you languaged it, I have to go back and listen to that program, made something come alive for me. And one of the keys in that for me was simply the word sustainer. The sustaining presence of a loving God, right? Rather than sometimes that the zikr has a very transcendent feel for me. And your words brought it back to my heart, to the presence and the presence of all things around. What sustains us? What allows me to feel safe in my body? It was, I'm going to look that up again because it was so beautiful, and it's really served me as an anchor, one of those anchors in my body. So it depends on one's ability. And if a person has been traumatized, it's very easy to go back into that state of trauma. And that's what we're seeking to heal, is what can I do? And ultimately, it's our practice. And with the big pieces is seeking support. That's what works for me. Sometimes with big things that come up, I'll go into that later, but like if there's certain events that aren't good and they keep repeating themselves, or I seem to be getting an internal message or a thought that keeps coming up, for me, that's usually a sign that I need to pay attention. It's a sign, it's positive, it's from God that's saying, pay attention. We talked about that in the first class. Those darker thoughts that come up sometimes from our unconscious mind into the light in the conscious mind, befriending them and saying, what's happening? What do I need to pay attention to? So, okay. I misspelled that in my typing. Once traumatized, always traumatized. That was the question. Is it possible to heal from trauma? Yeah, but I also want to say, let's say I don't know that it happens all at once for me. I'm just speaking about my experience. But many things that were very traumatic for me at one time have less and less of a hold on me. They're softening and they're becoming lighter, as if they're going to just dissolve. So that's my experience. And yes, I believe it's possible to heal from great traumas. For me, I don't know if I'll heal from all my trauma in this life, but that's not the question. It's for me, the question is, what's in front of me now? What am I being asked to pay attention to? And that's more the deeply rooted trauma that I'm speaking about, the daily things. There's tools in the toolbox. Can I use compassionate communication? I'm feeling because I need. Can I, something we haven't done in the classes, can I reflect back to somebody about what they might be feeling and needing? That's really the second part of this class. How do I use this to interact in the world? So just see if there's a particular theme or a pattern that keeps emerging in your life. Is it an indication that there might be a need to look deeper? And at the end I wrote, ask, am I fulfilling my life or my soul's purpose? And I don't know that it's one thing we do all in one moment. The ultimate purpose is to know God. That's the ultimate purpose. And then there's the gifts that we've been given to express. And I know at times in my life, it was very easy to get caught in that responsibility of needing to make money, to pay the rent, to buy food. But always asking that question, is there something that needs completion or something I need to begin? What did I really want to do when I came into this life? And what you can do if you don't have an inkling is ask your child self. Children know, the inner child knows, I wanted to write and I wanted to be a nurse. And I never became a nurse, but I developed this interest in holistic wellness. So let's see. I think I was asked about I don't know that I wrote the question out, but the sessions that I and others offer that are trained in this work are sometimes called polyvagal trauma work, or working with the polyvagal trauma system. And poly means many, and vagal refers to the vagus nerve. So that works with those three systems: dorsal, sympathetic, and ventral. So what does a session look like? So there are certain things that are important to me. And one is, how can I create a space that will feel safe and compassionate for myself and for the person who's coming in here? That's the most important piece. And it's a space in which the client, I really wish I'd written, becomes their own healer. Sometimes in this work and in some work, biodynamic craniosacral work, they speak of the health that's always present. So, Ya Shafi, Ya Kafi, the health that's always present, even in the sickest person, that health is present. So my role is perhaps to do my best to be compassionate with that person and listen to them and trust in the health that's always present, that when it's ready, will begin their process. Listening, going slowly, listening some more. We did this last week, I think, helping a person feel safe in the body by remembering a loving experience, an experience in which they felt completely accepted, and learning how to feel that in the body. For a lot of people, the concept of being in the body is, it's not familiar. It's not a familiar concept. And if people have trauma, being in the body can be very scary. And then a session, this is hands-on work, but it can be done on Zoom. My teacher's teaching beautiful classes in this that I hope some people will walk away from here and want to study with her, because she's quite profound. She's been doing this work for decades and has a deep wisdom and deep presence to offer. Right here in Charlottesville, but if you're on Zoom, she has students from Ecuador. So could be anywhere. And then the session involves gentle touch. If the client wants that. If they don't want gentle touch, then it's not necessary to touch. So I can give you a little sample. If there's someone that would like to work with me that feels safe with me, I'm not talking about looking at deep trauma or anything like that, but just might be a simple opening. Is anybody curious? I see a hand coming up. Okay. So
I'm curious.
Sarah's hand is up.
Let's do someone from the participants. I think that was that you, Maha?
Yes, I said I was curious.
Yeah. So do you want to try it, Maha? Do you,
What can you tell me what does this involve?
actually, some simple questions, and you can say yes or no.
Okay.
Okay. So the first piece is I just want to connect with you and say, I'm so glad you're here. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Great. And I'm wondering how you're feeling today. So we both know how to connect with our feelings. How are you feeling?
Okay. Right now I'm maybe conflicted about being courteous versus honest, but alhamdulillah, in general, a good day. Very busy, but very good.
Wonderful.
Alhamdulillah.
So one of the things, and I'll explain later why we're doing this, okay? But and this is just a first step. So what I'm going to do, and if Maha was in a room, she'd be on a massage table with a supported wedge pillow, half sitting, and under lots of blankets and pillows under her knees. Sounds like where I'd like to be right now. Doesn't that sound cozy? Just lying back. But we're not in a massage room. And so it's very wonderful to see how this can unfold. So I'm going to ask you, Maha, since I can't touch your arm, and if I was with you, I would ask you permission to do that. But I'm going to ask you to notice both of your arms from the elbow down to your hand, down to your wrist. Just notice that.
Notice what, Amina? Notice what?
So I'm going to ask you to notice both your arms from your elbow to your wrist, right arm and your left arm. And if you could speak as your arm, which one says, touch me first, right arm or left arm? Which arm feels like it would like to be touched?
I don't want to be touched in the arms.
Okay, all right. So I will leave that there then. Maybe we'll do something a little bit different. So you mentioned that you'd had a slightly busy day.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, I'm just noticing with love and compassion, is there a place in your body where you feel that busyness?
I am struggling to hear you. I have
Okay.
been struggling to hear you, and because I'm driving, I'm out of town.
Oh, okay. Well, if
So,
you're driving, I guess your arms don't want to be touched.
no, I mean, I stopped. I parked, but
Okay.
because the earpiece
I see.
is in the trunk, and I don't hear all your words. So
Okay.
so the busyness is in energy being expended just to hear some of your words come through, some of your words don't come through. So it's me struggling and putting a lot of effort in listening. So this is part of the being busy with paying attention to just hear.
So do you think that we should continue now or perhaps work with this another time?
Maybe another time. I mean, I didn't know what was involved, but I was interested in hearing how a session, what you were saying. You were asking, is anybody interested in hearing? So yes, if you think perhaps somebody else would be a better example, please go ahead.
Yeah, that might give you.
Amina, I can volunteer in place of Maha because she is having to drive her car back. So it's Hanan, by the way. So I'm willing to volunteer.
Okay. So let's start. Welcome to just to being in here tonight, where we're all
Thank
sharing
you.
together.
Yeah, I'm so happy to attend live instead of, on on YouTube.
Now I am going to ask you, your arm from your elbow to your wrist, your right arm and your left arm. Is there an arm that is really speaking to you now and says, "I'd like to be touched"?
Yeah, the left connection, the rotator cuff of the left arm.
Okay. And what we're going to do is now notice your left arm, let's say from your elbow. So I'm going to hold my arm up, my skinny little arm, from the elbow here and to the wrist. Tell me if there's one place that really says, just stay there. So for me, I think it's my mid arm.
Do you want me to mimic what you're doing? This?
Yes. I'd like you to find the place on your arm that feels like it wants to be touched.
Yeah, the rotator cuff, the connection between the arm and the shoulder.
So can we go a little bit lower from the elbow to the wrist?
Then it would be my wrist.
Okay. So is it okay if I hold my wrist? And is that your right or left arm? That's your left arm, right?
Left, yeah.
Is it okay if I hold my wrist at the same time you're holding your wrist?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I'm just going to pause a little bit. And in a session, I would stay here as long as it feels right, unless the person on the table says, "Don't touch me there anymore. It doesn't feel good now." So it might be 5 or 10 minutes. And what I'm doing is when we touch the skin, we're warming up skin. And beneath the skin is fascia, connective tissue. And fascia is everywhere in the body. It wraps up nerve cells, muscle fibers, which are muscle cells. It compartmentalizes the body. And you can, once you warm the skin, then the fascia starts to soften.
Yeah, I guess it'll take a while because it's a snowy day. So,
Well,
so the weather in general in the apartment is so cold.
Yeah. Oh. So you need some warming.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, you can call it that, yeah.
So I'm just going to stay here and hold. Because sometimes, if the person's body lets me, I can travel along the fascia and feel where there might be a place where energy is a little stuck.
I see.
Yeah. So there's 2 places I want to go. Is it okay if I share them here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if it's okay with the others.
Yeah. So one place I felt was your rotator cuff up through here in the shoulder.
Yeah.
Another place was possibly the digestive system.
In my
The belly.
digestive system?
Yeah, the belly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The connection between the esophagus and the stomach.
Yeah. So let's just stay with that slowly. And then what I might do is in a first session, so you can gradually bring your arm down and release it if you like. So a session might differ. I might not start there with someone, but that's a good way to warm up the system. And I'm listening to what I feel in the person's body without being invasive. So there's a way to feel, use my body as a tuning fork, but not take it in, and kind of travel like a tracker. And if that doesn't happen, there's a reason for it. And I have to respect that reason, not try to force something. And then in a session, we might go to the other side. So the system is warmed up. And that may be all I'll do in a session. And we might pick up on an area. And then I might say, can I put my hand on your abdomen? And the session, it's about going in. If you take if a person goes too deep, it can be scary. But I'm listening for impressions. I'm listening to someone I was working with, and I'm really being sensitive to client confidentiality. But in her conversation, she said a couple times, she used the word space and spaciousness. Because I'd worked with her before, we were able to go to where she felt that in her body. And then came down to what was needed, why she felt this lack of spaciousness, and then worked with how she could work with this something on the outside to bring about change. And when she did that, the following week, she told me the pains that she had in her neck and her digestive system had gone away. Now, I don't know if they'll come back. It's not magic, but it's a freeing up of this energy and then re-exploring. Do I need to go back here? Is there something else? So does that make a little bit of sense? A second session might go deeper. So working with somebody's kidneys, and in Asian medicine, kidneys represent fear. And we said on top of the kidneys are those little adrenal glands that sit like a little French beret, was my joke. Nobody laughed. Everybody was on mute. They were laughing at home, right? Tell me. So
they are the one responsible for our energy, right?
Well, the kidneys hold something called Jing, and I don't know a lot about Asian medicine.
You know,
I
the
knew,
notes,
but
the
no.
notes sitting up
Teach
that's
it.
for them.
Yeah. But what happens is when a person is in fight or flight all the time, our kidneys literally, physically pull in and up the spine. Your kidney's the size of your fist. It's encased in something called adipose tissue, fat tissue, and it's roughly under the 12th rib, so our lowest rib in the back, unless it's dropped. But when a person's experienced stress, those kidneys pull in and up. And so there's ways. Sometimes you'll say something, there's a dialogue piece that goes with this work to say, if you could speak as kidney, what would kidney say to you? And people who have never done this kind of work, or sort of, it might sound like strange language, but their wisdom, their inner wisdom, God's wisdom, always comes up with the right word. Always. And
my kidneys speak all the time with
yeah. And I could never guess what a session's going to be like. Sometimes I get a hint when they come in. So facial recognition, that again, face is important, the voice. And I also know what it's like to be as a client. For me, when I'm a client, I go back to being a child, literally. You know, I'm vulnerable, even with my safe, wonderful go-to person. I'm very vulnerable because I know I can let down my guard, my armor. I'm there to expose something and work with it. That gets a little scary for me. And sometimes my teacher, Janet, was saying, her teacher, Kathy Kane, says, this stuff can be messy in the beginning. Remember last week we used that analogy about combing the knots out of the hair? That can be messy. You got long hair and you're trying to get those knots out, but then it gets easier and easier. So,
Amina, thank you so much for sharing what that session would look like, because it was just an eye opener for me and for anyone who's been curious and typed up those questions. I'm sure now we have a better idea, and I just really appreciated how, again, the emphasis is since we live in our bodies, a lot of time what we're feeling, or if not always, has a bodily response. And so now from what you're sharing, by touching or just like you said, analyzing what the body is feeling, like you walked us through in the beginning, just kind of doing a body scan and seeing what the body's doing, it hints to you your state of being, what's going on inside. And so we can use the body in that way, almost like a map that points to the inner struggle that doesn't have the words maybe at the time. I'm just looking at the notes and I see that you had this whole piece on compassionate communication.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I think we might have covered the questions. I'm just curious.
I could do some of the other questions next week. Next week's our last class. But I also want to thank Maha for standing up and saying, yes, I'll go. And then Sister Hanan for stopping in. And what I'd like to do, Sister Hanan, since we started something, you know, I want to make sure that just check in with you now. Are you feeling complete? Are you feeling it's not that was not a full session, that was just a little taste. Are you feeling complete? Are you okay for now?
I had a different objective that I didn't mention. I was touching areas where I have pain in, and then you mentioned something that makes sense to me now, that your whole purpose was that by touching that area, so and then the heat starts getting created, and then the fascia, because I'm not good in anatomy, I think he said there is fascia, and that helps when the heat makes it to it. So that makes sense, because normally when I have that kind of pain, what my body tells me at this point is that I want heat. So what I do is I overdress me, and so that the area that is paining, and then actually it goes away. Now I get that physical connection between heat and the pain going away. But I don't know if that was your target, because like you mean spiritually complete.
Well, just, you know, I don't want you to feel sort of I'm open and now she's going to talk about command, you know, be like leaving you midway. And we didn't complete. That would be just a little taste of a larger session. But I just want to know if you feel grounded right now. Are you settled in your body?
Kind of.
Okay, let's just see maybe if as we go on. I just don't want to leave you high and dry, as we say in English.
Yeah.
So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
There's 3 more questions, and I can work with those next week, inshallah. But there's one that I wanted to talk about. Someone had asked, what about someone suffering from trauma repeatedly, and she or he had boundaries, childhood. So one thing that you can do, and this comes out of compassionate communication and I would say trauma work, all of these pieces come together, insight meditation, is if you're in conversation with somebody, or somebody starts a conversation, or it might be a stranger on the street. We haven't explored yet that piece of how to respond to somebody, but it may not feel safe. You have to listen to your body. And if you're feeling triggered, stimulated, scared, overwhelmed, you can say to that person, I don't want to talk about this now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need to take some time. And don't ask permission to leave. Get up and walk away. Or you could say, I'm so upset. I don't want to. excuse me, I don't want to say something I'll regret. So I'm going to take some time and feel more centered and walk away. Or you could say, let's try this again in 20 minutes after you say that. Or I love you so much, I don't want to talk about this. I need time to think it out. That's the way I'm made. It's sometimes very difficult for me if somebody says something that's really triggering for me. I need time to think it out and then get back with the person. And thinking it out, if I'm stimulated, I might be in sympathetic dorsal, and maybe the next day I'll be able to go feeling a need, or I might be able to go feeling a need right away. We're all made differently. But it's important to know how to create boundaries. And that was just one little piece I wanted to bring in. So you don't feel safe, don't be there. You know, this is scary for me. I need to step away right now. So, yeah. This is too much for me. Let's talk later when there's no yelling. I need to pause. And then I said, if your life feels threatened, you can get up and leave immediately. And there are ways you can use nonviolent communication. Marshall's talked about that, where it's averted violence happening to someone. But I'm thinking more about people we know, right? People we have a relationship with, or people at work.
But how about if the people that you're asking them to do that do not respond to your request and keep going and going and
You
going?
don't have to wait for them to respond. You get up and you leave.
Wouldn't that be rude?
No, it would be safe.
No,
I'm being feisty here, sister. I'm being feisty. It's safe.
It's safe for me, but how about their own feelings? I mean, especially if they are,
if you are feeling threatened, unsafe, really upset, it's scary, you don't need to be there. If it's a situation that you can't turn around in that moment, you just say, this is overwhelming, I need some space. And if the person can't respect that, that's why you don't ask. You don't want to get re-engaged in the conversation. And this is going to come up next. We're not here to fix anybody. Okay. You're here to take care of yourself and be safe. And
so be selfish about it. Do not.
No, it's not being selfish. So I'm going to take that word.
Of not thinking of how they're going to be feeling. Just think about that. I need to be safe.
You need to be safe. Yeah. And sometimes I remember listening to a webinar on compassionate communication, and the person said, what do you do when you don't have the energy, the heart to give empathy to somebody? The answer was, you don't give it. Otherwise, it's not honest. Sometimes I do, of course. But you want to do this feeling a need, which maybe we can get into next week. So I have on these papers a list of what empathy is not. Okay. And I fall in a lot of these categories, just like you did, Sister Hanan, of wanting to fix, right? Fixing is not empathy, right? So I'm going to go through the list. The list is advising. So we're assuming someone has told us something that they're upset about, and it might be about their work, their relationship, something that happened to. Advising would be, if I were you, I would do, people don't need to be advised. Sometimes if we ask for it, but initially you want to connect with that person's feelings. What are they feeling and what's the need? One-upping. Ha, you think your divorce was bad, you want to hear about mine? They're laying their heart out. Maybe they're angry, but their heart's hurting. They don't want everyone up. They need connection. Educating. So somebody's trying to tell you this, and I say, have you ever heard of compassionate communication? They don't want to be educated in that moment, right? And I do this. Imagine I'm an educator, right? I tend to want to teach people, and the piece is to back off and listen. How can I connect with that person? Consoling. Consoling is not compassion. Poor thing, you did the best you could. That's consoling. Storytelling. I know somebody who went through the same thing you did. Want to hear about it? Sympathizing. And this is recognizing the difference between compassion and pity. Sympathizing might be, this is a terrible thing that happened. Let's connect with, are you feeling upset because you needed respect? There's difference. Explaining, I would have called you sooner, but I would go right, maybe if the person's frustrated, I might say, I can see you're frustrated. We had an agreement to meet at 10 and it's almost 11. And then I might want to share something, but I want to connect with their feelings, their need to have agreements honored. Correcting. You'll get over it, right? A lot of people have been through deep grief who've had someone that's passed away. And people don't always know how to deal with trauma like that, listening to the story. And so they say, don't worry, pat on the back or hug, you'll get over it. Maybe not. You may always have a tender place with certain memories. Interrogating somebody. When did this happen? When will you have to leave your job? Right? The person's concerned about maybe not leaving a job they love or not having some income. Analyzing. Sounds like both of you. Right? So these are what empathy is not. And if we can remember that this is about this beyond right and wrongdoing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. Rumi's quote. This practice is about empathy. It's not about being here. It's about being in the heart. It's about being in the place that feels. If we attempt to fix a situation, it takes us away from the present moment, right? We're still in our head. The focus is taken away from what's happening. And I wrote down, I imagine most people don't want to be saved. They just want to be seen and heard. And then let's see, is that true for you? That if there's something that you, in your heart, that you want to share. Sometimes I want mommy here to fix it and make it better. Sometimes I want that. But not at that time. Mostly the healing comes when a person has seen and heard me. Remember, I told the story, I think I don't know when it was, but it was about visiting my friend in Charlottesville. And she asked how I was doing, and I probably muttered something that was happening. And because she was in the thick of learning about this, and I don't even remember what it was about or what she said, but she probably said, are you feeling because you need? And my body's response was wanting to burst into tears because I hadn't been met that way. Maybe sometime in my life, but not normally. Most people are doing the other things out of goodness of their heart. They just don't know how to connect to feelings and needs. That's the difference. So compassionate communication allows me to break the cycle of repetitive thoughts for myself, just my own thinking, offers me a way to find clarity within myself. And it supports us in empathically creating connection with others and ourselves. What a gift. Bismillah ir-Rahman ir-Rahim. We become living, inshallah, living vehicles of that beautiful teaching. Right? For all the 99 names, ir-Rahman ir-Rahim. And I remember from our beautiful sister Yamina's teachings, right? Mercy and compassion is that noun verb, compassion in action, mercy in action. So I think we probably need to wiggle or something for a moment. I have another exercise, and oh, excuse me. This exercise is yawning. Okay, and this comes from this wonderful book, and I apologize. It was a busy week. I think I have this written down. I have a list of resources I'll go over next week. But she's the one that has wiggling and rocking back and forth. And now we have yawning. So with any luck, we all remember how to yawn. And one way, of course, is there's Sarah. We go around people and we can yawn when we see them yawn. That wakes that up. The other way is take a deep breath and you're going to open your mouth wide, let the soft palate go up, and make yawning sounds. So can we unmute and everybody yawn? We can do this. Can we unmute? Everybody make yawning sounds. Yeah. Oh. Mm. Oh. Mm. Yeah. Why do we want to yawn? There's a reason that these things happen in our body. It relaxes your throat, your palate, upper neck, and the base of your skull. Okay. So yawn when I do this. It helps balance the flow of something called cerebral spinal fluid, which is made in the brain and flows through the body. Of all the fluids, it has the highest number of photons of light, and it bathes the cells. Isn't that a beautiful image? Our craniosacral fluid bathes the cells in light. So this helps to balance this flow of craniosacral fluid. It keeps the brain and spine clean and flexible as well. It helps you to come down out of your head. So let's see if we can yawn again. Can you feel the belly release? Can bring us in the head and out. So it's going to increase your production of saliva, so help digestion and enhances flavor. Ooh la la. Lovely, right? Okay. I'm picturing Sarah doing this with her little one, you know. Ooh la la, we just yawned. Does this taste better now? Yeah. It increases fluid flow to the eyes, which washes and soothes them. It increases the brain's production of serotonin, which is the currently trending neurotransmitter that tends to balance moods. It calms you if you're hyper, brightens you up if you're gloomy. Okay. And it just feels good. Yeah, yawn and you feel settled and you might want to stretch a little bit. Okay, anyone have a comment about yawning? I'd like to hear somebody say, let's say some yawning.
Contagious.
Contagious, yeah.
I couldn't stop. I was yawning for a couple of times after that.
Yeah. So let's see where else I am. So I have a short review from last week. And it really is short. So we have observations, and that's pure witnessing. When I saw the dirty dishes, yuck, on the sofa, when you said that I'm irresponsible, when I heard that work was going to be closed for 3 months, an observation is noticing without judgment, shame, blame, or guilt. Feelings is easy. Ha. the cause of our feelings is not the other person's behavior. Our feelings are an emotion or sensation in response to what we observe. Compassionate communication allows us to accept responsibility for choosing our feelings. For me, it's already programmed in. So certain things stimulate and I feel, I feel whatever I feel. But ultimately, I can slow down, take a breath, and ask myself, do I want to go there? Is that the place I want to go? And I step away from this and just note my feelings without reacting. So it's responding rather than reacting. I know, we're pinched for time a little bit, but I have some words here that are taken from Tom Bond's book. And on the resource list, this is the book I suggest if you want to delve into this deeper. He's also the one who offers a year-long course. I took this as a kind of game from his book. Sometimes thoughts are disguised as feelings. And these words I have listed, and there's plenty of other words, are not feelings. But what we can do when someone uses one of these words or a different one is try to hear the feeling underneath that. And that comes from listening rather than reacting. So I think instead of going to breakout rooms, let's do this here and just have people jump in. One word is abandoned. What do you think a feeling or feelings might be underneath that word abandon?
Rejection.
Rejection. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Vulnerable.
Vulnerable.
Not loved.
So not loved isn't a feeling. That's a need for. So if you're, so let's take that. Let's go for not loved. How do you think a person might feel if they say, I'm not loved?
Feel void.
Say it again.
Feeling void.
Not appreciated.
Well, let's make it they have a need. Those are needs. So appreciation is a need. The person might feel they feel lonely, or maybe they feel disconnected. Maybe they have a need for appreciation. What was that, Yumina?
I said different people may react in different ways. Some people may show it as anger, some as depressed, lonely,
yes,
frustrated.
And that's the key, is that when we hear someone, I don't want to just rattle off the list. Are you feeling, I'm wondering if you're feeling, or I'm guessing you're feeling, I don't want to rattle off a list. I really want to stay silent and hear what they're saying. And what am I feeling in my body? What is their being telling me? And then I might get, are you feeling unhappy? Right? Are you feeling sad? So I would rather say, are you feeling sad? Are you feeling, I might go, their need, are you feeling a need? So let's say you're feeling sad. Are you feeling a need for connection? Some support? Do you need support? Right? So another one would be abused. I was abused. So that's not a feeling. It's something that happened. And it's probably, if we're getting pure with this, we're going to say, well, that's, the observation is just seeing what happened. But if a person says they feel abused, I would say, are you safe? If it's something in the present tense, are you feeling scared right now? Do you need support? And I would listen. So I won't go through the whole list. Betrayed is another big word. I was betrayed. So if a person says betrayed, what is it that they might be feeling?
Lonely.
Lonely? Absolutely. Absolutely. What else? So I can
Pain, psychological pain.
So
Hurt.
I feel pain. Hurt? Yeah. How about sometimes there's that piece of anger? And for me, if I go back into times when I felt betrayed, right? If I go under that, sometimes it was anger, but under anger, anger is a good red flag that usually says there's something deeper. And like Sister Amina said, there can be a whole list of possible feelings. So maybe sad, grief. So when we're touching into someone else's feelings, we're looking for a felt sense. What am I feeling in my body? And I have a note about not taking someone else's energy on. I'm simply noticing and reflecting back what I imagine they might be feeling and keeping it very simple. You know, when you said you felt abandoned, I wondered if you were feeling a deep sadness, some loneliness, and even scared. And I have to really watch, not doing it like I'm an encyclopedia, coming from the heart again. One time, my family member of mine was a caretaker. Since we're going on YouTube, I want to be respectful, but a family member was a caretaker for another family member, and in a state of overwhelm. And I went to see that person, and that family member was locked in a room, didn't want to see anybody, had that door shut. And I had just started studying this. And I had my little card with, are you feeling because you're needing, right? And I'm sitting outside the door and I'm saying, are you feeling because you're needing? And I won't tell you what she said back to me, okay? That was not a way to greet her. That was not a way to touch in. So I was a real newbie at this, and she let me know. So there's different times when it's not appropriate to approach people. Just don't go to that need. Just stay with the feeling, and maybe put some fire in it. You know, I'd be tired and angry too, and she probably would have still yelled at me and said, "Go away." Didn't need to hear anything. Just needed space, right? So, and what could I have done? Walked away. So, but I was just learning this. So there's a lot of a fine tuning with this and some humor, I think we have to have about our own process. And it's really important to stay with feelings before moving into needs. When I was studying pre and perinatal trauma, which was incredibly deep work, we had one teaching assistant for every 2 people in the course, and it was about 40 people. And our teacher would come around and visit each little group as we worked on each other. And I was wanting to connect with the person's feelings, and I started to go to the needs, and she said, stop, just stay with the feelings. That's important. So it's not done by rote. Okay, it's not done by rote. We're learning a formula, but we're human beings, so we have to apply it understanding humanity and tenderness and wisdom. We need wisdom. So there are some statements here, and we are so close to time. And let me know if we need to run over. It's okay with me, and if it's not appropriate or not doable for people, I can respect that. If we don't get to go through all of this, this would be a great practice, inshallah, for you to look through the notes. And I have a saying here that if we cling to anger or hatred, we will suffer. And I know that. I know what it's like to cling to my anger and hatred. It is possible to respond strongly, wisely, and compassionately without hatred. So we can make those strong statements. Hey, what do you mean you're upset? I'm not through talking to you. Why are you leaving? You know, I'm done. I need space. I'm out. Right? You can have that affirmative voice and practice saying it. And hopefully we can create some empathy buddies. We can do some practice with this. I think that would be a wonderful thing to do. So here's some statements. And I'm going to ask you each with these sentences if they reflect our feelings. And if they don't, can we reword the thoughts that are disguised as feelings? So the first one is, and I will let you answer, I feel that you don't like me. Does that reflect my feelings? I feel that you don't like me.
It's a judgment.
An assumption, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So how could we reword that? So we could say,
Maybe I don't feel safe. It could be worded that way. And at least then it's about your feeling rather than your assumption about the other person.
right. So I might say, I feel upset and I have a need to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or if we're reflecting back to the person, I really hear that you're angry. And we'll take that up another time. Maybe we can do a part 2 someday and move on more with how to reflect back. Sentence 2 is, when you yell at me, I feel frightened. Does that reflect feelings? When you yell at me, I feel frightened.
Yeah, I think it does reflect.
Yeah. I feel like hitting you.
No.
Oh, yeah. My little 3-year-old coming out. Yeah. Are you angry because you wanted to have another story and I said no? Right? I feel used. I feel used.
No, used is not a feeling.
No. So, hey, when everybody at work is getting a 20-minute break and I'm only getting a 10-minute break, I feel angry, frustrated, right? I want to be seen and heard, and I need respect too. I want to be part of this group.
Being taken advantage of, would that describe it better?
Nope, that's a judgment. We don't know why that person's getting 10 minutes.
Being taken for granted. I feel like I'm being taken for granted. Does that?
No, I'm being used. The person, if we break it down, let's say that they're only getting a 10-minute break and everyone else is getting a 20-minute break. It would be more like I have a feeling to be seen and I have a feeling for respect. I have a need, need to be seen. I'm feeling frustrated. I'd like to be seen. I have a need for equality. Need for equality. Can you see how the other one that you said was more of a judgment? Always go back to what we think the person is feeling and needing and what we're feeling and needing.
Yeah, I'm following you.
Okay. When I hear the birds sing, I feel happy.
Feeling?
Yeah. When I hear the birds sing, I feel happy, and I do. I feel concerned and sad when my husband and I argue.
It's feeling.
Yeah, I feel concerned and sad. I feel useless. So I have a need. Let's see, I feel useless.
It has the need to feel, to be seen rather than, it's not a feeling, it's the need, right?
Yeah, so maybe, oh, I'm not, I don't feel happy. I have a need to have some purpose in my life. Right? So I'm going to just take a peek at the.
It sounds like validation.
Yeah.
The need to be validated, accepted.
Yeah, so yes, absolutely. They have a need to be valued, seen and heard, have purpose. And maybe they do have purpose, but the people around them are not acknowledging all that they do. Yeah. So where are we? It's 9:30, and are people feeling that need to go right now and pick up next week? Or do you want to stay a little longer? What is the good adab here for me and for all of you?
I have a question, Sister Amina.
Yes.
What is the context of I feel, I need? Is this for self-clarification, or is this therapist-client relationship, or what? I mean, what is the context of engaging somebody's feelings and needs to this extent?
Because we want to, if we want to engage with the person's humanity, we want to engage with the heart of what they're saying. And this can be done with at any time. This is not about being a therapist. It's about being a human being. For me, I want to have clarity. I have a need for connection. I want to have a deeper connection, not on the surface. I want to connect with people's feelings.
Yes, but what is the context? I mean, because I find a danger here in reducing this, and a lot of people have written about this, that are we going to be relating to each other as broke? I mean, remember, it was very fashionable to write about you need to be broken in order to relate to somebody else's brokenness. So a bunch of broken people are walking around sharing sub stories of brokenness, and it becomes who's more broken than the other, and which brokenness is even more sensational and more salacious. So the danger is the context. Yeah, my point is that the context. Am I going to engage somebody's feelings because I want to understand them, their trauma deeper, or is it a whole, is it a euphemism for their entire humanity, that I want to see them through their needs and their feelings?
What I can share with you, my experience, is if I get into that list of what this is not, it pulls me right into that person's energy. If I attempt to fix or console or advise or to educate, I get pulled into the story. My experience with this is it's very clean. I can, with my heart, perhaps connect with somebody's feelings, maybe or maybe not connect with the need. It depends what they've said. But I stay out of their bubble. I'm not getting pulled in as somebody who needs to teach or who needs to fix. Also, I want to say my approach, I'll bring in something by Rachel Naomi Remen. And she has a wonderful talk about if nobody's broken, nobody needs fixing. And I like taking that perspective better. We're all just at different places in our life. And I understand that this sounds a lot like therapy language. There's ways to make it much more, I like to call it street accessible, where it sounds like everyday language. But what I've been trying to do is keep us connected to what we're doing for now. So this is not a 3-week course. This is probably a lifetime course. In the resource notes, Tom Bond, I've got that book down, offers a 1-year course. He's the one that does this in 20 countries and 14 languages at this point. So that people, the reason we're doing it is our conversation often stems around shame, blame, guilt in order to get needs met. We bypass a person's heart, and we bypass letting them know about our humanity. And whenever I use this, it's very clean. And I don't want to say use. I'd mentioned to my friend once I had used this in a situation. She said, you don't use it, you become it. So she's a strong teacher for me.
So, Sister Amina, this is the context back. I mean, for me, clarifying the context is important. When we are dealing closely with somebody who's experiencing trauma, yes, and we want to care about their humanity, this is the context of engaging needs and feelings. But if I don't give a damn about Trump's feelings or needs, I don't give a damn. So whether he feels X, Y, or Z, my response would be, okay, go ahead and feel it. Whether he needs X, Y, or Z, again, it's completely irrelevant, and I don't want to engage an elected official or a public servant about their needs and their feelings. So if I keep looking at people as their needs and their feelings exclusively, then we are not engaging each other as adult equals who have thought and responsibilities and who are running around crying for attention. So I'm just saying it's important to contextualize. Otherwise it becomes I'm concerned about the ramifications. That's my point.
So my experience is I had see if again I want to keep people's identities safe. I have just found this very clean, and it actually allows me not to get caught in their stories. And if I feel that they're trying to pull me in and I'm not able to offer empathy back, then it's not that I don't care about what they're feeling, but that's when I have to say, I'm uncomfortable listening to this now, and I can't have this conversation. So what you're doing, you're not saying I'm feeling or I'm going into a big thing. You're just saying, I'm not comfortable with this. I can't do this conversation. If they keep doing it, saying, another time perhaps, thank you. You walk away. So, again, we're staying in
Sorry. What kind of conversation you're walking away from? The I feel I need conversation?
Well, what I'm saying is if someone is trying to engage Maha in a conversation and she's not really interested in connecting with their feelings or needs, then that's when she needs some space and probably needs to say, I need to walk away. Now, my experience is when I connect with someone's feelings and needs, usually it makes the conversation very short. And I can tell you of even violent confrontations that I've been in, where once I've connected with a person's feelings and needs, there's no place else for them to go to. I'm not doing power over, and it doesn't give them a chance to do power over me.
Is it always true? I'm thinking the example that was given last week, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I enter a room and I feel that it is not ordered enough and I feel annoyed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I can say, I feel annoyed because I have a need for order.
Mm-hmm.
But the need for order is not universal. Order is not, there is not a scale what is ordered for disorder for me can be very well ordered and good for lots of other people. So when I say that, that was the example, one example given, I could be actually using this as, I could end up bullying the other person sharing the room with me because they don't have the same sense of order. And it could be because I am feeling, I feel the need, or I think I have the need for this amount of order because of a feeling, because of a backstory I have.
So there's two pieces to this.
So it's not true universally that I feel because I need, because I also could say I need because I feel. Unless the person is doing mindful working. So we are not always going into the heart. I could be going into emotions coming from people.
Because you're human. And
yeah,
that
emotions is not always the heart.
Yes.
It could be, at least Islamically, it could be coming from the ego or coming from the inspired, mindful heart. So that's totally different.
So what you do when you're feeling stimulated by something is you slow it way down. And I've got that's the last thing I think I've got written for this lesson at the very bottom. The one thing we haven't explored is there's a sequence. So we've looked at observation, feeling, need, and the last piece is making a request, right? So I can let somebody know, and you can be specific if you say, if you have a need for order, that's part of something that's important for you. And expressing that to someone, you can be specific. It's the same thing when you have a young child. You don't say to them, go clean your room. You have to say, if they're starting out, we're done reading the book, let's put it on the bookshelf. And then maybe when they get that one down, okay, great, you got the books on the bookshelf. Let's put your shoes over here. Okay, so you can be specific even with adults, right? And say, this is what I need. And you can, and you make a request. And so I wouldn't, you know, you might have a backstory about needing order, and that's for you to decide, is this really, am I feeling annoyed with this? If you are, you want to notice that feeling and name the need. And it's, this is, like I'm saying, it sounds, so yeah, this is a formula, but I don't always stay with the formula, and I'm not always in it. Sometimes it's just nice to chit chat with people and not always be connecting to feelings and needs. But when I've had some people, sometimes I can tell you incredible success stories I've had. And one that comes to mind, someone that was acting in very violent language toward me. And it was about something else, not about me, but just by saying, are you needing because you need? That person was stopped in his tracks. No one had addressed his feelings and his needs. They were always either being defensive or offensive because he has this very angry personality. So people get, you know, how do I feel safe and how do I keep them away from me? And I was able in that moment to name it, and it just stopped him. So not going to happen all the time. We're in the dunya, you know, we're in the world of duality. Did that help, Sister Yamina? Did that help, Sister Yamina?
I'll have to ponder more about it, but I concur with Maha that context is important, because otherwise it may feel like imposing, one person imposing on others. Because I know of what you said about someone using not only violent word, but even violence, and you end up making friends with them without even being aware of this way of speaking. It's all about being in that wavelength of compassion and connecting with the other means, whether we're aware of it or not, means connecting with their need, the deepest needs. And I'm not talking here about these needs, the list of needs, because I don't feel that they are universal, but there is a deeper need for human beings, like to have meaning, to have purpose, value. I'm talking about those kinds of needs. But I need to ponder about it. Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Uh-huh.
So I was gonna say the way I see it, and it makes perfect sense to me, and here is why. So as humans, we all have emotions and feelings, and I think by saying I feel X, Y, and Z, or my needs are X, Y, and Z, helps the other person understand where you're coming from. And so just like I have every right to feel the way I do and have a certain need, the other person does too. But at the same time, when they're expressing themselves, you have every right to listen, but that doesn't mean that you, or not listen, but that doesn't mean that you invalidate how you feel at that moment based on what you're hearing. And a way for me to say is, for instance, I had a friend who I always listened to whenever she had like an issue or like some unease, she would call me and she would distress basically, and just share what is bothering her. And there was a day when I had too much on my plate, and I knew that I cannot be available because I'm the type of person that kind of gets sucked into other people's emotions, and I start to feel really sad for them. So I have to find that balance of not getting sucked into that. And I've learned that by saying, I'm sorry you're going through this, it must be tough, but today I need someone to be there for me. And I know I can't be that person for you, and I know that you cannot be that person for me. But let's discuss this at other time. And I find that helps that person, no matter how frustrated they are, no matter how sad or upset they are, when they hear that, they know that you're not just walking away from them and dismissing what they're feeling, but you're expressing how you're feeling at that moment. You're not invalidating their experience, but you're simply saying, I need my space too, and that's like a respectful way of setting that boundary. And I think that no matter what kind of relationship it is, if there is respect, then people will learn that boundary, and they will know that it's okay for you to express yourself and say that I cannot be available right now to you. I need some time to myself. So I feel like this is, I don't know if I took it the right way, but I feel like this is what you were trying to explain. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I think it makes perfect sense. If someone is being, to me at least, if someone is being aggressive or is expressing themselves in a way that makes me feel unsafe, you have every right to say, so you have the X, Y, and Z need. Is that correct? So you're asking for that confirmation from them instead of just giving them the words and saying. But at the same time, I can say, well, you speaking this way to me makes me feel unsafe, and I need to feel safe. Or we can return to discuss this, at other times. So you don't need to engage, and you're not asking for their acceptance or, but you're drawing that line, so that, I don't know if this helps anyone, but I think it goes hand in hand. There has to be mutual respect for this to work,
Yeah, we need that.
Or consent. There needs to be consent, otherwise it doesn't.
There needs to be permission. And, if I said to my daughter, are you feeling because you need, her eyes would roll, right? She'd like, oh, there's mom again. So I'm not going to approach her that way. That's not how I approach her. I approach her in a different way. But I try to stay present. I find it sometimes difficult with family members, but I try to stay present. So if the conversation shifts in a certain way, she likes to talk about politics a lot. And there's only so much of that I can listen to. So I'll simply say, this, we've talked about a lot of things now. I need a pause. And I sometimes have to say it 2 or 3 times, just repeat it. But then it's a done deal. She respects it. So it depends who we're speaking to. It depends on our mood in the moment.
And also, we could keep that in mind when we are listening to others without articulating it in words.
Exactly. That's why last week in the practice I gave, I've really just tried to stay with feelings and needs initially. That's a long practice. What do I want to say? It's a long practice just to be able to settle in our bodies, connect to our feelings, and notice other people and their feelings. Notice what they're feeling, and may not have to comment on it. Just it's an increasing in awareness. That's what it is for me, rather than being just here. Yeah. So.
Thank you, Amina, for sharing that. Does anyone else have any other comments, questions, concerns? Amina, I just wanted to bring your attention to Sister Noor's message in the
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Inaba, Sister Amina. It's really nice to meet you. Sister Amina, I really appreciate the way that this conversation developed, and this is what I received from your teaching me about I feel because I need, is that I keep that silently in my heart when I'm listening to any other person. And it has been really, really wonderful in helping me understand my husband and my children. So thank you so much for that. I wanted to also ask if next week you could please also talk about how strategies when I am self-clarifying that I feel frustrated because I need silence, but there's no way I'm going to get silence until bedtime, for example, until all the kids are going to bed. So there's no way I can get what I need right now. And just realizing, and then I also think like, I'm a person who's experienced I've experienced a great amount of trauma as a child and as a teenager. And I think back to certain experiences, and there was no way I could have received at that time the needs that I had. That was not my reality. And and so I'm wondering about that piece of for many people, when like real big trauma is happening, or just later on in life when they're just small pieces, like I need silence and I'm feeling frustrated, when we can't fulfill those needs, what are the strategies that we use?
There is something called about the beauty of unmet needs. Someone had a question. One of those first questions was about forgiveness, forgiving self, and how to move on when one's dreams aren't realized. And I thought there was so much beauty and tenderness to that question. Sometimes our needs aren't met. And in this program, we make requests. It's a request. It's specific, it's doable. We can talk about that more next week. But a demand is different. A demand is telling somebody what they have to do. You must do this. You have to do that. When we make a demand, it's to meet our own need and be right. It can also be a way to make others feel our pain when we don't share our feelings, and usually comes from our own past experience. So if I find myself wanting to go to my angry place and take care of it now, the only thing I can suggest is that's when we slow way down and pause. And sometimes it means walking away, or sometimes it means staying there. When your own need isn't met, for example, needing that space, I would just, in a way, just respect that need that you have, and seeing if there's a way. So I'm hearing that you need some support, you need space, and you'd like to have some support. And seeing if there might be some kind of support available. And if not, if you just have to roll with that, there's a way to feel into the body, that kind of acceptance that that need isn't met right now. But there's a way, so a little bridge might be that I can meet it later. Let the body know, can't do this right now, but I'm going to do this later. So this is a learning, like I said, with a lot of nuances, lots of nuances to it. And this is just a really basic outline, just getting into this a little bit. And we can mourn when we have needs that are unmet. We can mourn those needs. There's a part of our culture, I think, that wants things to be neat and clean. And that means sweeping away the things we don't know how to deal with. And that's a real need to have space. Want some space, some body space, some mind space around children.
Thank you. That was very powerful.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, to honor that, I know what it's like as a mom to just want to have my body to myself sometimes in the old days, when my daughter was quite young. So,
I love that question, Sister Inaba. That's my reality too. So I'm excited to see if there's another, and Dr. Aliyat just posted in the chat as well, if there's exercises to do for this need is not met now, but will be met later.
Yeah, I really, I would just say that, see what speaks to you this week. And I love that sharing about just listening and imagining what the other person might be feeling or needing, just their feelings, without having to respond. That's a big piece, just to be able to pause and listen. So it's a wonderful way to connect with their humanity. I had a student once said he knew someone that had an index card and wrote, "I'm feeling because I'm needing." And he would actually say to people, I'm learning this new way to communicate, and it might sound a little bit like some kind of therapy, but we're having this conversation. Is it okay if I, jump in with what I'm learning? So obviously it wasn't a deep conversation. It was light, but he was wanting to practice and had people he felt comfortable asking that question to. So.
Does anybody else have any questions, comments?
Yeah. I want to say there's a comment here about if there's a list of books. There is. I sent a big list of resources, and there's actually a free library, didn't print out dark, but you can go to that, and I've given the names of people that write books that are quite well known at this time about trauma. Mm-hmm. If that's an interest, you can also find Marshall Rosenberg's books here for free to read. This is all free.
I believe you kind of came up with a list of resources, right, Amina?
Yeah, and this is it. I sent it with today's mailing in the notes.
Okay,
so it was separate.
Will have access to.
Sarah, Sister Saira had a comment in the.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Sister Saira, we're right at time, but did you want to share your comment, inshallah?
I just wrote something based on my profession, Sister Amina, but you were talking about speaks to me. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Seva. Makes me wonder yes, we can definitely practice the emotional control aspect of it, but the internal dialogue that goes through the mind, that is also having to do with the thought component. So maybe in the later sessions we can talk about if what you are teaching us, what you are letting us know. In the moment, anger and emotions definitely are very powerful and they take us over. I'm noticing this, they take me over even with Allah Ta'ala. And I'm trying to remind myself that Allah Ta'ala is above us, and I'm not going to be complaining, and I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be upset. But with humans, with other people, with little ones, go on, please.
I was going to make a suggestion: journal. I've done that before. I remember really being angry at a director at the school where I was working. I was stabbing the paper with the pen. I was really ticked off.
Upset with.
But I just sat down and wrote over and over what I was feeling, what I was thinking. And it really helped me put it in a different context. So journaling can be a really powerful tool for some people. And it helps to get it out of the spinning in my mind. So it helps me to differentiate. I'm not caught in it, in the mind. It might come back, but I'm not caught in it. I differentiate and I'm able to witness it more clearly when I journal and can separate out from it. I also, there's two things I recommend for people if I'm doing trauma work with them, and I can talk a little bit more about that later and give you some resources, not just for me. But here there's a place where you can go and take a course in mindfulness meditation for free online, 15 minutes a day. And I really encourage my clients to do that. I do it and they're finding wonderful benefits from it. And it's with two well-known teachers. I've never met them, but I consider them my teachers. So that's also a resource. And it's not about pushing down emotions. I've tried to incorporate a little bit of it in this teaching. It's about noticing them. It's about noticing them and how to work with them in that context. They will build a beautiful foundation for you. So thank you. We can go into requests next week and finish some of the questions. And I just thank you for asking all that you're asking everybody.
Thank you, Sister Amina. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. Inshallah, we look forward to the next and final session. And thank you, Sister Amina, again. Jazakallah khair for addressing everyone's questions and
thank you
taking the time to gently recap as well as present today's session. Again, everyone, you have notes and resources emailed to you. And Sister Amina, I just wanted to again point your direction to the chat because somebody offered Sister Noor a message to you that she wants to be, okay.
Yeah, got that, thank you.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair, everyone.
Thank you.
In the protection of Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.
Wassalam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.